As many of you know, my typical videos each week are about auctions and values, or the history of Chinese porcelain, what's going on in the marketplace, the eBay sales each week on the newsletter page, all that sort of thing. But today I'm going to talk about something a little bit different because it's a question I get asked a lot by people who sell antiques, in particular Asian antiques, of course. The question is, where's eBay going? What's the future of eBay? Is it dying? What's the problem? And this is a really complicated issue because eBay has had a lot of problems. And as we all know, we're going to start here. Visionaries come along every so many years, okay? Over the years, we've had Henry Ford, John D. Rockefeller, and like them or not, they were very bright, very forward-thinking people. Walt Disney, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and on and on. And sadly, eBay hasn't been led by one of these since Meg Whitman left in 2008. That's the simple truth of it. And for years afterwards, eBay continued along basically with them on their momentum and on their reputation. And the company did okay for a number of years. And then it started going sideways a bit. Okay, it wasn't growing as much. There were discord among sellers more than before. There were problems, and they just weren't addressed well. And then you had the arrival of the Devin Winnig, who was forced out in September of 2019. But we'll get back to that in a second. At any rate, as he came in as president, and then in 2008, and then he became CEO in 2011, No, he came in 2011 as president, and then he became CEO in 2015. And he was the one that was trying to turn the company around, make it grow, and that kind of thing. He shouldn't have been appointed. He was the wrong guy for the job. His background was that he was an executive at Reuters, which is, as many of you know, a news agency, and has nothing to do with online selling. But for some reason, the board thought he was a good choice. And it's no secret that for the last decade or so, other platforms have been growing consistently year over year. eBay's core business was lackluster, and then eventually it became no longer a growth company. They just hadn't grown. Nothing. Their numbers, their metrics were bad, and all one needs to do is to check those numbers from its core business. And despite signing up new sellers, eBay's seller base in real numbers has declined. From a high of 25 million sellers in 2014 to 19 million by the end of last year, and that's a 20% decline. Sellers were leaving eBay, and no one at the company seemed to care or wonder why. This was the most baffling thing to me, was that they never understood why sellers were leaving the site. And it was the core philosophy of the company that drove this into reality. All right, and then you have the overall user base that's also declined from a peak of around 175 million a few years ago, and ending in 2021, it was down to 159 million, and that's a decline of around 10%. The number is probably higher than that as far as how many people have stopped using the site altogether, because if you use the site to buy and you stop buying, you're still a registered user. You just haven't closed your account. And most people don't bother close their accounts. They just leave them in place and say, well, maybe someday I'll find something I want on there. But that's not a good way to grow a business. And Amazon, for example, from 2016 to today, their revenue year over year has grown around 400%. eBay's has been basically flat for the same period of time. Their revenues have not grown in any sort of appreciable way. And despite all the rosy talk, eBay is more or less running on fumes. and has remained profitable on paper, primarily by selling assets, buying back stock, cutting overhead, increasing fees, internalizing their payment system with managed payments, and this kind of thing. They sort of took their business and anything they could do to scrape another penny out of it without actually fixing what's wrong with the site. Became their business model. How can they do it? And the problem is, at this point, they've sort of eaten all of their seed corn. So what's next? All right. Nothing eBay has done since around 2014 has created any momentum for growth for the company. And amazingly, on paper, the company seems to be in pretty good shape. So what's happening? All right. Well, where did it begin, I guess, is what we want to say here. In my opinion, eBay has been mismanaged completely now for around 14 years. And the results are now very obvious of what's happened, because over the long term, this has not benefited the company, because they're not thinking in long-term growth the way Amazon does. They're thinking in very short-term growth, quarter to quarter. Amazon thinks 10 years out, 15 years out. eBay thinks, 16 weeks, the next, 10 weeks, how are things going? How is it going to look when we report to Wall Street? And that's really what the problem is. They just don't have a vision. It's interesting because around 10 years ago, when I noticed it really started to change. Back then, I talked weekly, sometimes daily, with my account rep at the time, because we were selling a lot of material on eBay. We were doing $50,000 to $100,000 a week in sales on there. And we were dealing with the hassles of non-payers, people trying to scam us on shipping addresses, dealing with the never-ending, complaints. Oh, I want a partial refund because I didn't notice this little chip on something, or that kind of thing, nitpicking. And it was a pain in the neck. So I ended up speaking with my account rep a lot. But we also talked about things like non-payers and changes in listing fees and how that would impact us and everything. And why are non-payers not kicked off the site, for example, was a common thing. After all, it's a violation of eBay's famous terms of service that they seem to want to hold everybody to when it suits them. It's a 100% violation, and the punishments dictated are loss of use of the site. That's the deal. But instead, they get second chances, third chances, fourth chances, fifth chances. They're very hesitant to kick anyone off. And if they are ever kicked off, then what they end up doing is just opening up a new eBay account and coming right back on the site again. All right. And he gave me the usual pap about building community and not wanting to punish anyone for a mistake they made, and on and on. Basically, the standard company line when they didn't have a good answer or when they screwed up was, we're doing it for the community, and this is our view of it. And this was always an issue with us. We were dealing with them all the time. And I said to him, well, you should kick these people off because they're hurting your core business. They're hurting you because they're discouraging sellers. And I said, sellers will leave. Sellers are leaving. And he said, no. He said, no, never. He said, the sellers won't ever leave because we have the buyers. And I said, that's not how it works. I said, the buyers only use eBay because the stuff is there, because there are things on there that they want to buy. All right. If you don't have the sellers, you don't have anything. The sellers are what keeps eBay going. It's not a buyer base. The buyer base comes after the material arrives. All right. It's as simple as that. People go to where the goods are. You don't go to the Apple site if you're looking to buy wool clothing. All right. You don't go to a cookware site that's on the internet if you're interested in buying a power saw. That's the way it is. People go to where the goods are. Any rate, along the way, 2012, 13, 14 in there, the company began having some troubles, and they began laying off people. And other tech companies were hiring away eBay tech people pretty easily because they were paying more, they had a better work environment, and their labor force, they had a bit of an exodus began. And then eBay did the real dumb thing, was that they decimated their affiliate program. That's the program where they pay people to have websites where they promote eBay items that bring you to eBay. And for that, they get a small commission if the person buys something. All right. And the what's known as you click on a link somewhere. I don't know if you know this. If you click on a link on a website and it takes you to eBay, it puts what's known as a cookie on your browser, and it tells eBay that this person saw the link for this item on another site and are coming here to buy it, perhaps. And if they do buy it, eBay would pay that person that runs that site a commission. They began cutting the duration of that cookie's validity from 30 days down to 24 hours, which decimated the affiliate program. And then since then, they further cut the commissions on those for those folks by anywhere from 30 to 50% over the last 6 or 7 years. And this has caused, again, a drop in activity to the site, and it has impacted it. They probably don't realize it, or maybe they don't care to. And then they began spending money on more and more money with Google, which they've always spent money on, but they increased that budget. And what they've seen in recent years is that Google is no longer as effective as they had hoped it was. And the reason is that eBay has lost its momentum. People aren't that interested in the site anymore. So here we are in 2022. And we know eBay began making what were disastrous mistakes about 10 years ago. And today we can just see the results. Okay, the momentum of eBay's year-over-year growth was slammed to a halt, while sites like Amazon, Etsy, and others grew at exponential rates. And we all know the Amazon story, the Etsy story, and all that. They grew and grew and grew, while eBay was just sort of sliding sideways. Because they forgot that in order to make money, you have to spend money. That was no longer operational. And the idea they adopted was to spend as little as possible, as much as you can, to bump the bottom line for the next quarterly report without any thought to 5 or 10 years out, heaven forbid. And this became the mantra of the company. It was always quarter to quarter. And whenever you heard Mr. Winnig speak publicly, right up until a few months before he was forced to resign, this was all he talked about, was shareholder value, shareholder value, shareholder value, with very little attention on what was good for the sellers, what was really good for the buyers, what created a good environment on the site. And Mr. Winnig was increasingly getting criticism from the investor community because the company, the stock, the institutional investors were getting very frustrated because the company was failing. It wasn't keeping up with their competitors. And when you're in an industry and you're not keeping up with your competitors, you're considered to be a bad bet. And eBay was getting left in the dust. All right, so Winnig, having such a short-sighted management style, basically he was visionless. He began selling off assets and doing things to get some short-term gains onto that balance sheet. They began increasing fees. They began increasing, the cost to everybody on the site. The commission rates went up, and this was they were seeking any way they could to get some cash in for that next quarter, to bump that stock value, because that's what it was all about. It wasn't about anything building down the road that would build a massive company like Amazon. It was about, what can we do for next week? What can we do for next week? And it was pretty shocking. And nothing was working to bolster user or cash volumes. As a matter of fact, in 2021, the company had to admit that they had overstated their what's known as GMV, which is their gross merchandise value, by including in their numbers uncompleted transactions, items that weren't paid for, that were sold at auction, items that were people just said they wanted to buy and then didn't go through with the transaction for whatever reason. They actually were including those as sales in their numbers. And when this was exposed, they very politely had to go. It wasn't illegal, apparently, for some mysterious reason, but they went back and readjusted their numbers for several years, and it was about 10% of their annual revenue was off. All right. And then you had the pump and dump of a couple of years ago. Activist investor Elliott Management came along. I don't know if you remember the story. They bought up about 4% of eBay's stock, and things just got worse. Though a lot of people thought at the time it was going to get much better. They were thinking, this company's going to come in, because Elliott was doing all this happy talk about core values and encouraging sellers and wanting to build up a better brand and all this stuff that people had wanted to hear for the last 10 years. Elliott was sort of saying it. We're coming in here. We're in it for the long run. Well, Elliott, with much fanfare, entered the scene as a large shareholder. They got a couple of seats on the board of directors, and they made some announcements that eBay was not maximizing profits and was very openly disapproving of the company's current management, in particular Mr. Winnig. And they were right. They, however, didn't mean what the eBay users thought they meant when they were talking about shareholder value. And they doubled down on the short-term business model, the same thinking that had stopped eBay's growth to begin with. But Elliott wanted stock profits, not corporate business profits necessarily, because there are ways you can push up corporate profits without really doing much good to the company at all. And what they did was, as far as I can tell, was to take steps to juice the balance sheet, even if the core business is sliding backwards. It wasn't the point. The point was to make it on paper look good. So, for example, they in 2020, they forced eBay to sell StubHub for $4 billion, which is a large amount of money. And this was something that early on, before Elliott came in fully, when they were talking about it, Winnig seemed to be in favor of that. He said, "Oh, I can go along with that." Of course, he knew his position was in jeopardy if they have activist investors, so he probably decided to go along with them. And they sold the stock. Did they put the money into the company? Did they put it into staff improvements, increase marketing, improve the affiliate program, anything like that to benefit the actual users of the company? No, they didn't. They did a stock buyback. Why? Because it pushed up the value of the stock. And they put just about 100% of that $4 billion within a matter of months went into stock repurchases. They bought back the stock. And what it did was it caused the stock to spike, which is what happens. They hadn't gained anything. The company, the core business was the same. They just sold an asset and then went into the marketplace and bought the stock, and that incited other people to buy the stock, and it hit a spike. Okay, and that's basically what happened. And Elliott juiced that stock and then dumped all of it within a year, and they disappeared. They're gone. They're no longer there. All right. This was the eBay got played because they thought maybe we can make some money here. And despite all the happy talk about fixing the company and core values that benefit the consumers, it was all BS. It was a classic pump and dump done from the boardroom. All right. And that's what really happened. But during this period, the eBay cultural mindset was really gotten strange, and from 2015 to 2000, right up through today. It's sort of one of paranoia, greed, short-sighted thinking, manipulation, and this is how I view how the management of the company is, and panic. Within the company was setting in a few years ago, and it was going badly when Elliott came along. It was not going well, and the eBay mindset can't be more clearly illustrated than with the revelations of the guilty pleas of 7 eBay executives, several high-ranking ones, and the resignation of Mr. Winnig to illustrate what happened. And what they did was absolutely unbelievable. And this is the story of the website E-Commerce Bytes and Ina and David Steiner. They run their blog site. Many of you have seen it. It's a small site, but it's an interesting one. They cover what's going on with Amazon, eBay, and all this kind of thing. And I find them to be fairly even balanced. I've dealt with them on a few occasions. They're nice people. And Mr. Winnig didn't think so. It all started in 2019. Then Elliott was coming on. They were in January of 2019. They began making moves to buy up the company. They accused eBay of basically, and Mr. Winnig, of misexecution. All right, and the title of the blog that the Steiners put on their site was "Activist Investors Eviscerates eBay Management." And the pressure from Elliott and Ina's coverage of it may have contributed to more to Winnig's paranoia and over this criticism. He really didn't like it. It made him furious. And when Mr. Winnig, who was then, of course, the CEO, encouraged these actions via text messages to Mr. Stephen Weiner, he explained to Mr. Weiner, who was the head of communications for eBay, how much he didn't like the criticism. Weiner wrote back and said, "We're going to crush this lady." And 1 month later, Wenig fired off a text to Weimer with a singular directive: take her down. And in response, Weimer put eBay's security division into action. Did you know eBay has a security division? Well, they do. It actually included a former captain of a police department who's now, I think he's been sent to jail. But at any rate, in the summer of 2019, Weimer exchanged text messages with the security division head, a man named Jim Baugh. And he said, if I can neutralize Ina's website in 2 weeks or less, does that work for you? And Baugh wrote, I want to see her in ashes. I want to see ashes, he said, as long as it takes, whatever it takes. And this video that you're about to see was what happened with the Justice Department here in Massachusetts when all this came to a head a while ago back, and what's become of it. And in the video, he says 6 people were indicted. Eventually, it became 7 people. And as a result, Mr. Wenig suddenly, when this story broke in August of 2019, Mr. Wenig quickly resigned within a month and claimed no knowledge of it. He didn't know anything about it. And sounds like he probably got a deal that if he resigned, they wouldn't prosecute him. I don't know what would happen. But at any rate, here you go.
Pressing federal cyber stalking charges against 6 individuals. Let's listen in.
Of harassment and intimidation against a middle-aged couple living in Natick, Massachusetts. That couple published an online newsletter that reviewed and was sometimes critical of eBay and other e-commerce companies. Jim Baugh, eBay's former senior director of safety and security, is being sought by federal agents in California, while David Harville, eBay's former director of global resiliency, was arrested this morning in New York City. They were charged with conspiracy to commit cyberstalking and conspiracy to tamper with an investigation. 4 other co-conspirators, all of whom worked at eBay, were also charged with the same crimes: Stephanie Popp, Stephanie Stockwell, Veronica Zay, and Brian Gilbert, who notably is a former police captain with the Santa Clara, California Police Department. The complaint alleges that the victims were targeted because eBay executives were unhappy with the coverage of eBay on the couple's website. To be clear, based on the complaint unsealed today, eBay executives were not merely unhappy with the victim's coverage, they were enraged. One of those executives texted that he wanted to, quote, crush this lady, unquote, referring to the woman in the couple who ran the site, and another told Baugh, his subordinate, to, quote, take her down, unquote. The result, as alleged in the complaint, was a systematic campaign fueled by the resources of a Fortune 500 company to emotionally and psychologically terrorize this middle-aged couple in Natick with the goal of deterring them from writing bad things online about eBay. The harassment scheme had 3 phases: sending disturbing deliveries to the couple's home in Natick day and night, sending the couple anonymous, threatening messages online, and actual physical surveillance in the Boston area. Starting in August 2019, Baugh directed Popp and Zay and others to set up anonymous email accounts, cell phones, and internet connections, and use them to send harassing and disturbing deliveries to the victim's home, all paid for with prepaid debit cards. These deliveries included fly larvae and live spiders, a box of live cockroaches, a sympathy wreath on the occasion of the death of a loved one, a book of advice on how to survive the death of a spouse, pornography mailed to their next-door neighbors but in the couple's names, a Halloween mask featuring the face of a bloody pig, and a pig fetus which was ordered but after an inquiry by the supplier, thankfully was never sent. Simultaneously, it is alleged in the complaint that Baugh and defendant Brian Gilbert had Stephanie Popp set up fake social media accounts from which they sent threats to the victims. The messages, laced with profanity, took credit for the deliveries and were intended to look like messages from people who actually sell on eBay and who disapproved of the couple's website's coverage of the company. I'm not going to read these publicly because they're really profane. They're quoted verbatim in the complaint that was unsealed today. I'll give you a mild example, one from a Twitter private message to the couple on August 7th, 2019, saying, quote, "What it going to take for you to answer me? Guess I'm going to have to get your attention another way, bitch." close quote. Another tweet on August 10th came 14 minutes after the bloody pig mask was delivered to their residence. It said in all caps, quote, "Do I have your attention now?" In the third phase, Baugh, Harville, and others flew from California to Boston to physically surveil the couple at their home and around Natick, Massachusetts. This allegedly included trying to break into the couple's garage so they could install a GPS on their car. Before the trip, Baugh and others practiced installing a GPS on a Toyota RAV4 in the eBay parking lot. Over the next few days, the defendants followed the victims in a series of rental cars. They would swap them out. Meanwhile, the online harassment continued and worsened. On August 18th, just after midnight, the defendants posted a classified ad on Craigslist, purportedly from the couple, inviting singles, couples, and swingers, quote unquote, to their house to party after 10 p.m. each night. People were encouraged to knock on the couple's door at any time, day and night. Less than an hour later, using a fake Twitter account, the defendants publicly posted the wife's name and age, the couple's home address. According to the complaint, following weeks of this, Baugh next set in motion a strategy to manipulate the couple into believing that eBay was reaching out to help them stop the harassment campaign. This was an effort to earn the couple's trust by having one of the defendants, Brian Gilbert, call them as a representative of eBay and offer help in investigating the harassment campaign, which of course was being orchestrated by the defendants themselves. Gilbert called the victims on August 21st. Based on the complaint, he reported back to other co-defendants that they, quote, "are totally rattled," unquote, and had referred Gilbert to the Natick police. He observed that while one of the victims was, quote, "a bitch," unquote, the other was more receptive to his call. By the end of August 2019, the defendants, now aware that the Natick Police Department was investigating, turned their attention to deceiving the police. They allegedly fabricated internal eBay documents to create the appearance that for some time eBay had been concerned about seemingly crazy online criticism on the couple's website, including the false allegation that the couple had threatened the company's CEO. Further, as part of their strategy to manipulate and control the situation, defendant Gilbert also offered to talk to the Natick PD, to, of course, supposedly offer eBay's assistance. When Gilbert met with the police, he allegedly lied to them about the origin of the harassment campaign and his involvement in it. At one point, when several of the defendants feared that the Natick police might trace the harassment campaign back to California, they compiled a list of people living in the Santa Clara area who they might be able to frame for the harassment activity if needed. Defendant Baugh directed Stephanie Popp and Stephanie Stockwell to find suitable candidates in the Santa Clara area. Later, it's alleged the defendants also lied to eBay's in-house lawyers who were trying to figure out what was going on. Defendants Harville and Popp were interviewed by phone, both lying about their involvement. Popp then allegedly sat in on the phone interviews of other co-defendants to coach them about what to say to the in-house lawyers at eBay. Finally, to complete the picture, the group allegedly tried to delete all text and social media messages related to the scheme, but as you'll see in the complaint, failed to do so. This was a determined, systematic effort by senior employees of a major company to destroy the lives of a couple in Natick, all because they published content the company executives didn't like. For a while, they succeeded, psychologically devastating these victims for weeks as they desperately tried to figure out what was going on and stop it.
So the question is, why wouldn't eBay's management think they couldn't get away with it? Back in 2019, you have to remember, tech companies were flexing their muscles all over the place. They were going before, Twitter and Facebook and Google, and these companies were going before the House of Representatives in hearings over issues of freedom of speech and technology and snooping and gathering information without users knowing it. And they basically said, stuff it. We don't care what you people say. We're the tech industry. We can do what we want. So why wouldn't eBay think the law didn't apply to them as well? Why wouldn't Mr. Winnig think he could do whatever he wanted? It's simple. These madmen believed that they were above the law. and part of a terribly exclusive club. And that's where it all wound up. You know, years ago in conversations with various members of eBay's management team, they asked me, because I was selling a lot of stuff on there, and I ended up speaking to somebody pretty high up the food chain at eBay. I think the guy was one person below Mr. Winnig at the time. I can't remember his name, but anyway, it doesn't matter. They were curious about what I thought and what would be good to help improve the antique category in particular, and especially the Asian art category. And my first suggestion with them to them was you need to block all sellers from mainland China from selling in the Chinese antique category. And I explained to them that, and they wanted to know why. And I said, because by law, it's illegal to export antiques out of China, out of the mainland. You can ship from Hong Kong, but not the mainland. And by law, you're only allowed to sell reproductions, modern reproductions. And allowing them to sell on the eBay's Asian antique platform is knowingly an act of fraud, because none of the stuff is antique. And it's interesting because as of today, there are, for example, in the Chinese antique category on eBay, there are 550,000 items listed. 450,000 of them are being sold from mainland China. 450,000 out of 550,000, with a slew of other fakes, of course, being sold from around the world, totaling another 60 or 70,000, and that makes it roughly 96% of the site are fakes and copies. And under the general Asian antique section, if you go and look that up, there are about 1.5 million items listed there. 1,150,000 of them are from sellers in China. All right. So in other words, 2/3 of the category is known fakes directly out of China. And of the remaining 350,000 items listed in that category, I would estimate that 90% of them are also copies, if not more. I think 90% is being kind. All right. And this is something, this is the reason why eBay, of course, doesn't want to kick them off, I assume, is because they want to get the commissions, even if the buyers are being defrauded. They have no regulations, they have no requirement saying that, note, this item is coming from mainland China and it is by default modern. All right, they should at least put that in there. I even suggested they set up a separate category for sellers from China for just Chinese decor, but not claiming that they're antique. Any rate, this was some of the conversations I had with them. They really didn't go anywhere, and the main thing was that the eBay was desperately trying to get into the Chinese market, and of course Alibaba has eaten their lunch completely. All right, that's the thing. I suggested to them that first-time users, first-time violators or people who don't for non-payment should maybe get a 30-day suspension from the site or something like that. A second offense, 6 months or so, and and all that kind of thing. Because non-payment was becoming a very big issue with the auction items. All right. I even suggested why not set up auction items the way you can do with Buy It Nows, where the credit card is hit this and pays for the item the minute you say I'm taking it. And they didn't want to do that because they thought it would discourage participation, which is silly because it's what most companies do. If you buy something on Live Auctioneers or Invaluable and things like that, it goes straight onto your credit card. It's not a big deal, and then you just arrange for shipping. All right, very, very simple. And again, they thought it might discourage people and retard growth. And the whole thing was, in their mind, was they were totally focused on preserving buyers, keeping the buyers on the platform, because they believed, and they still apparently believe, that having buyers will bring in sellers, which is not true. Sellers only go in, one, if they have demand for their products, and two, they can be profitable and not have to deal with a lot of headaches. And that is why we've seen such a huge decline in higher-end Chinese material on the site since around 2016. It's really gone down. It's lots of them. Some of them still sell on the site, but they sell only as Buy It Nows. All right, that's one out. But many of them have given up altogether. And then eBay implemented other things that just further eroded seller confidence. They began demanding that sellers had to pay for return shipping from China. So if a customer decides you're not going to give them a refund, they'll say, well, then the heck with it. It's $175 or $150 to ship the item back to you, and you're going to pay it if you don't give me what I want. So it actually gave the buyers leverage to blackmail sellers into giving them returns. And if you ask around, you'll find out that's a fairly common thing. And then one of the biggest problems that they came up with was the requirement of a signature on delivery of items, I think, over $700. The problem is that the United States Postal Service has no arrangements with any foreign country to get signatures on packages delivered from the United States. In other words, there's no place in the world where you can ship a USPS package and get a signature upon receipt. They rely totally on the scan of the barcode. If eBay requires that, then what are you going to do? You're going to send it by UPS, FedEx, and that same package that cost $100 by the post office is now going to cost $400, $500, $600 with FedEx or UPS, but you're getting your signature. So guess what happens? The buyers say, forget it, cancel the transaction. That's what's going to happen every time. All right, unless they bought such a great bargain, they don't mind paying for it. But that's not typically the way it works. And then, of course, they added managed payments because eBay wanted the fee that PayPal was getting, because it's an easy way, they thought, to juice their profits by 2%, 2.5%, whatever they charge. All right, and it, of course, inconvenienced everybody who was used to using PayPal because to get their money, because now they have to give eBay their bank account information and all that, which it doesn't go well with people. All right, and they changed lots of other rules since then. But at one point, I thought we had a breakthrough with them, because back in early 2019, right around the time that Elliott was coming in to take over the company, or to get seats on the board, eBay approached me with the idea of working with them to set up an authentication service on eBay. And they called it Second Opinion, and we went back and forth for about 2 months with contracts that you can't imagine what it's like to deal with their legal department. Holy mackerel, they're insane. And we got it done, and the idea was that there would be a link put on the bottom of every Asian art listing of items being sold in the United States by an American seller. They had, for some reason, could only do it in the United States. And if somebody wasn't certain about an item, they could click the link. It would take them to a page that would explain the service. We charged a small fee. It was very similar to the identification assistance service that we run on Bitamount, where people can mail me images or links to auctions that they're looking at, and we'll send them back a reply about what we think of the item and maybe what the value is. We went through all that. They set it up. They put a banner on the Asian section at the beginning of the category explaining that the service was available, and I said, "Oh, that's great." And in a couple of weeks, there wasn't that many inquiries initially, so I went back and looked, and I realized that half the listings didn't have didn't have the banner on them below the PayPal logo, and the banner they put on the Asian antique category wasn't clickable. It just said Second Opinion with a one-line explainer, and it was supposed to be linked to a page they asked me to set up on our website, explaining what the service is. It wasn't you didn't have to do anything. It was just a way for information, and from there, then you could do the inquiry if you wanted also. And I called them and said, "Well, why isn't that linked?" And they said, "Oh, we had a change. We don't want to link to outside websites for some reason." Of course, it was a lie. They linked to outside websites all the time. But at any rate, by the end of the year, I noticed all the banners disappeared. The banner was off the Asian Art homepage, and they never told me they were canceling the thing. They just stopped it unilaterally. They didn't say, what can we do to improve it? We were getting inquiries here and there. It was going along okay, and they just said, no, we're going to get rid of it now. All right, and that's it. So as to where eBay is heading now, it's just a classic case of how eBay does things. So as to now where eBay is heading now, if the past is prologue, it doesn't look good. And so why should you be using site? And the answer for that is sure, use it. Use it until you can't deal with them anymore, I guess is what it is, which will, I suspect, eventually come, because it seems to come to everybody. We hardly do any business on there anymore for this reason, because of the hassles, the high commission rates, the restrictions, the shipping demands, and all this. And I and many people just said, this isn't worth it. This isn't worth it to be under their thumb, putting up with their nonsense. There's no sense of partnership or any of that. So if you want to use the site, go ahead. It's a perfectly viable site. You can still sell things on there for good money, but always keep in mind that part of it is you're going to have some headaches if you do a lot of it, and you're going to have to get in some big arguments with eBay on the phone, and they're going to threaten you, and they're going to basically tell you then we're going to suspend your site, because they've been suspending sites like the drop of a hat these days, mostly in the phone and sneaker area, because they're trying to keep the big companies like Nike happy, I suspect, is part of it, and the designer brand companies. But the same thing is going to happen over in the antique category. And had eBay years ago decided that they were interested in the antique auction area, which was one of their core businesses originally, eBay today could be the largest online auction house in the world, bar none, if they had been willing to invest in hiring some experts, some people that know the antique business, that know the auction business. They could have built up a phenomenal base. But they didn't want to. They didn't want to spend the money, because it always goes back to the money. Was that to make money, you have to spend money, and eBay, for some reason, decided as long as we have buyers, we'll have sellers, and as long as we have buyers and sellers, we'll have revenue. And it isn't working out. Now the company is sort of on a thing where they're focusing for higher end objects to sell. They want that to become their core business. Well, can you think of any business that isn't higher end than fine Chinese and Asian art? When you have objects that sell into six figures, and we've sold things for six figures on eBay over the years, and it hasn't been a problem. It hasn't been a problem. The people have paid, we've arranged for shipping, and it's been absolutely fine. So there are people on there that will spend $75,000, $100,000, $150,000, and allegedly that's what eBay now wants. But I don't see them doing anything to, in any way, to invest in that idea and to make a commitment and to build anything serious. And I think they're just sort of done. And I don't think right now they have any direction at all. It's more or less a rudderless ship. Mr. Ione, the new chairman, is there. I haven't heard too much about him, but from what I've seen and the decisions the company is making, it seems to be just more of the same mentality. And that's all I have to say on it. All right. I hope this was helpful. If you found it interesting, leave a comment. I'm sure this will spark some criticisms. Maybe somebody doesn't like what I just said. I don't know. Maybe you like what I've said, or you agree with it. You've had similar experiences. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it. Give us a thumbs down if you didn't like it. But I've been an eBay member since the 90s. I was in there very, very early on. We sold a lot of material on there over the years, millions of dollars worth of stuff. And we're one of the ones that basically stopped around, we really cut back heavily around 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. We just didn't see the point in it. Okay, have a great week. Thanks for watching. The regular weekly video will be up too. And see you next time. Bye-bye.